Hello, I'm Dango Rose. Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. The Mountaineer brings you the latest news of the peak-to-peak region, in print, online, through our podcast, social media, and special publications. Now, listen in to the latest news of the area with our local journalists.
I went back home the other day. I saw an old friend who happened to say, "Hey sister, what do you know? Let's sit down and have a cup of joe. A cup of joe, a cup of joe."
The song that you are currently listening to is called Went Back Home, and it is performed by Mollie O'Brien and Rich Moore, and it is from their album Love Runner, which you can stream wherever you get your music. You can check out more releases from Mollie O'Brien and Rich Moore, both as solo artists and as a duo, wherever you get your music. You can also learn more about the duo by going to mollieobrien.com, and you can see them performing live with an opener consisting of a band led by their daughter, Lucy Moore, and the Night Children by going to the Gold Hill Inn located at 401 Main Street in Gold Hill. More details later in the podcast.
Took one last look and then drove real fast. From down the road, I forgot my past. I'd hit the big time, or so I hoped. The bright lights really had me roped. They had me roped, didn't do as well as I had hoped. But
Hello there, everybody. My name is Jamie Lammers, and welcome to this week's Wednesday retrospective edition of the Mountaineer Podcast, where I bring you interviews that I wasn't initially able to air when I conducted them. This week, I've got a very special retrospective episode for you in the form of a Then and Now. I guess I was just kidding earlier. I still have some Then and Now episodes in store for you guys. However, this is going to be a smidge different from previous Then and Now episodes. I was originally going to air an interview that I conducted a while ago with our two guests today. However, that is not what I'm going to end up doing in this particular episode, because when I listened back to the original interview, I found the audio quality absolutely unbearable. At first, I thought that perhaps the audio might just be a little bit iffy, but that you could still overall understand our two guests. As I kept listening to the audio, though, to try and edit it, it became more and more evident that they would consistently cut out and be inaudible, and that in general, the audio quality was not very listenable in general. So, I'm not going to air that original interview. I think it is unfortunately not able to be listened to. I'm just glad it worked out for me to be able to write my original column. That being said, I do have a great Redux interview with those two guests that expands on things that we talked about in that first interview. It includes a lot of what we talked about in that first interview and then adds some awesome other details as well. So, I hope you enjoyed this interview regardless, and I'm still going to call it a Then and Now episode because we're still kind of comparing how things have been for these two guests now compared to how they were back then. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode, and let's just cut right to the chase. Our first guest. Do you mind introducing yourself real quick?
Hi, I'm Mollie O'Brien, and I'm talking to you from Denver, Colorado, from one of the offices here. One of the home offices, though. And I got a ham in the oven.
Our second guest will be joining us a little bit later in the interview, but for now, we'll talk to Mollie. I hear that you are performing with your musical partner, Rich Moore, at the Gold Hill Inn very soon.
That's right, and we are going to be there on, it's Sunday night, and he's not only my singing musical partner, he's my husband, and our opening act is our daughter, Lucy Moore, with her band, the Night Children, so we're excited to be doing kind of a little family thing that night at the Gold Hill Inn, where we love to play. We love the inn. It's really fun to be there. Yeah, I've played there many, many times and love the Finn family and just love the whole scene up there. So yeah, it's going to be great. It'll be fun to be up there with Lucy. Lucy's been going up there since she was born, so she's a regular.
I'll mention the specific date of that upcoming performance a little bit later in this episode, but for now, I wanted to check in. It's been a little while since we last talked, Molly. In fact, it's been over a year. I conducted an interview with you and your musical and life partner, Rich Moore, on September 10th, 2023. So, since then, how have your musical careers and livelihoods been?
Well, we have slowed down since COVID, and we're still on the slow down, which is fine with us. We're trying to be very selective with the kind of gigs we're doing, and if we can travel easily to places out of town, then we will do it. And if all the parameters are in place, we're happy to do it. We didn't work much this summer by choice, just because it's such a madhouse in the music world now. There's so many festivals and so many wonderful young bands out there and everything. We just thought, let's take the summer off and we will fill out. I'm kind of glad we did too, because it turned out to be a good summer personally for us to be home with stuff going on here. So we're good. We're not recording, but we always think about recording and think about doing new things. And we worked on stuff in the summertime and still formulating things. And, who knows? We're both in our 70s and we're not anxious to or feel the need to try to really prove anything. I mean, it'd be fun to have a new CD out, of course, but I'm sure our fans would like it. But we're doing a benefit on Saturday here in Denver for our local food bank, Bienvenidos Food Bank, and the ticket sales for that have been great. And we're going to have a little hometown neighborhood crowd, which will be fun. And then we'll be up at our stomping grounds, the Gold Hill Inn, in a couple of weeks after that, 2 weeks after Saturday. So we're good. We're busy. It's amazing how you can still be busy and not be working full time.
So how did you and Rich get an interest in music in the first place? Where did you two, and particularly you, Molly, start getting that interest?
Well, like everybody else our age, we listened to the radio a lot, and that's where we got the bug, and also seeing the Beatles on TV. And I got to see the Beatles in person, although they were so far away that it doesn't really count as being up close and personal. But I think we all, like a lot of young kids, I took lessons, music lessons and piano lessons and voice lessons, and just generally tried to keep singing, and one thing led to another. It kind of tugs at you, and you do it until you are either sick of it or you're dead, I guess. It's a pretty common thing, the way people have and even now I know young musicians coming up, or they hear somebody, or they'll hear somebody live at a festival, or they'll hear something on the radio and they get completely hooked. It's a hard thing to get away from if that's part of your DNA.
And what inspired you to pursue performing music as a whole? Did you catch that bug early on too?
I didn't really get the bug to perform until I was in my early 20s. I mean, I was in school, and I performed in school with recitals and that kind of thing, but I didn't have a band or anything, although I did play music with my brother in high school quite a bit, so we did perform then. But it wasn't until I was in my early 20s and I met some friends who are now some of my oldest friends who were playing swing music, and I didn't really know that much about swing music, vintage swing music, and I just fell in love with that stuff and wanted to learn everything I could, all kinds of songs from that genre, and that's when I started really getting the bug to perform. And then I didn't actually move out to Colorado till I was in my late 20s and really started performing a lot then. Then I was full-time, so I was kind of a little bit of a late bloomer. But.
Do you write original material at this point?
Not that much, frankly. Not that much. Rich does, but I don't, and I'm always on the hunt for the rare and unmined, fantastic songs that nobody's ever heard. I'm always on the lookout for that stuff. And people love hearing. That's kind of what I'm known for interpreting other people's songs. And I'm often denigrated as being just a cover act. But tell that to the people whose songs I've recorded. They're happy to have other people record their songs to get airplay and that kind of thing. And I'm happy to do that. I love, there's a lot of great music out there. It deserves to be performed, in my opinion.
So is there a particular focus that you end up bringing to your shows when you choose which songs to perform? Do you still focus on vintage swing to a certain extent?
Oh, yeah, but it's like everything. I focus on everything. It's not just one. I don't know if you've listened to our music or not, but people think because it's an acoustic guitar and that I used to sing with my brother who's a bluegrass guy, that it's bluegrass music. It's not bluegrass music. It's American roots music, and it's definitely all over the stylistic map, from swing tunes to folk music to blues to R&B, rock and roll. It's pretty much the gamut of all the styles. The only thing I don't do is I don't do classical music anymore, really, and nothing really heavy-duty rock and roll. So everything else is up for game. So.
And if I may ask, How did you and Rich first meet?
We met in 1981 at the Denver Folklore Center, which was kind of the stomping grounds for a lot of people in Denver. It was a music store in central Denver, downtown Denver, and I was working there. Rich was working at another music store up the street, and there was a party at my store, and he showed up, and we hit it off and fell in love and got married. But we were in a band first. We were in a blues band together and played all the blues kind of dive bars in Denver, which was a very good education. And one thing led to another. I mean, we just decided we had been playing together for a long time through our children's growing up years. But when Lucy went away to college, we decided to focus on being a duo and traveling together, which we were able to do because nobody was home to worry about. So.
And I assume that one of the big reasons that you two ended up connecting early on is because you realized you had similar tastes when it came to the kind of music that you wanted to listen to and perform.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're both attracted to folk music and acoustic music, but we both love all kinds of stuff. So Rich never really played much swing music or jazz before he and I were working together, but he's educated himself in that genre since then. And he's way into, when he gets on the phone, he'll be able to tell you his background. But we definitely merged at all the right places musically, and I think we see eye to eye on what we think is good. Sometimes we don't always agree, but that happens with anybody in the band.
So just to clarify your current family lineup, there's you, there's Rich, there's your daughter Lucy. Do you have any other children? Is Lucy your only child?
No, we have two daughters, and Lucy's the younger one. The older one is Brigid, Brigid, and she is also a fantastic singer, but she is a young mother and young children, and she's not really performing too much these days. We actually have some gigs with Brigid and Lucy after the first of the year, but Lucy lives in Lyons, Colorado, and she does play a good bit of music there, and she is a great songwriter and really, really wonderful singer, really musical person. So both the girls are very musical.
And did Lucy and Brigid show an inclination towards music early on at all?
Yeah, well, they were hearing music all the time, and they were learning all about the Beatles from their dad and all about jazz singers from me, and they just couldn't really help everything that they were absorbing. Just kind of became part of their whole canon of music. So,
out of curiosity, has being inspired by parental figures to pursue music been a generational trait from you guys as well? Were you guys inspired at all by your parents to be interested in music as a whole?
To a degree, but Rich's mother played piano and his dad sang in pretty famous choirs in Philadelphia. But my parents were not musical, really, but we had a record player and we had soundtracks to musicals and Benny Goodman and that kind of thing, but not too much. But I think what was played on the radio at that time in the early 60s was pretty incredible. There were no boundaries on, you could hear Frank Sinatra one time, and then right after that you would hear some doo-wop or then the Beatles. And so the radio scene then was really amazing. So
it was during the second part of that particular snippet that our second guest arrived home from shopping. This, in my mind, was perfect timing. I had gotten to talk to Mollie about her perspective about a lot of this background, and now I could talk to our second guest to elaborate on his own perspective. Now that you're here, our second guest, do you mind introducing yourself real quick?
Hi, this is Rich Moore, one half of the Mollie O'Brien and Rich Moore duo.
So as I mentioned earlier, Mollie's already talked about your backgrounds, how you met, all that kind of stuff. But I want to hear from you, Rich. Can you talk about your musical background and your perspective on it?
Sure. Let's see. Both my parents were musical. My mother, we had a really nice piano in my house growing up. And aside from it being a wonderful piano to play, which sadly I never learned, but my mother would play it. And it was also a player piano that played piano rolls, which are now things you only find in, well, even back then you could only find them in antique shops kind of thing. But we had some piano rolls and I would play them and my mother would play. And then my dad loved to sing. He was a member of a chorus in the Philadelphia area that performed rather frequently. And, and then as I heard Mollie saying about radio, there was lots of good radio growing up in the Philadelphia area. Lots of, like I heard her saying, you'd hear a whole variety of things. It wasn't just one type of music on that one station. You might hear Frank Sinatra, then the Beatles. Then you might hear the Four Seasons or, like she said, a doo-wop thing or all kinds of stuff, soul music, stuff like that. And then late 60s, radio changed and underground radio, what they called underground radio, came along. And it was really something because there's all these today's baby boomers were coming of age playing some pretty wild music. Some of it was really good and maybe some of it might not have been, but a lot of psychedelic stuff and a lot of rock and roll, rhythm and blues, all kinds of stuff. So that was kind of my background. And then I got into folk music. There was a club, actually it was a coffee house, had about 110 or 15 people when I was going there. And they had music all the time, and nationally known acts and regionally known acts from Boston to D.C. They'd all play at this club. It was called the Main Point. And you can go to their website. I think they have a Facebook page or something like that. And it's long since closed. The last I saw it was a vacuum cleaner store. But, I saw everybody I saw Joni Mitchell there, and I saw James Taylor there, and Bruce Springsteen performed there. This is a little tiny club, and Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee and Bonnie Raitt and Chris Smither and names that might not be familiar to you, but they laid the cornerstone for a lot of music of that time. So Jackson Browne, John Denver, Laura Nyro, just some wonderful, wonderful music I got to see there. So, and then the next thing, and then here I am today. How's that?
How early on did you realize you connected musically?
Well, right away, we knew our tastes were similar. We didn't really start playing together right away. Then we played in a bar band, I think she may have mentioned. And then when kids came along, life was really busy. So I was working a day job for a number of years. The current arrangement of the two of us playing together didn't really start until maybe 20 years ago, in and around then. But before then, Mollie was playing with her brother. And Mollie and I were occasionally in a local blues bands and bar bands and stuff like that, but I was playing in other projects of my own too.
I wanted to talk about some other performances that you have been involved in, Rich, because I couldn't help but keep in mind that shortly after I interviewed you and Mollie for the first time in September of 2023, in fact, a month after, in October, I ended up interviewing a man by the name of Harry Tuft. That man just so happens to be the founder of the Denver Folklore Center, and he has spent a lot of time in recent years performing other people's songs, and it sounds like you two ended up performing together during that time. In fact, that was the show that I ended up interviewing Harry for.
Yeah, we did. It snowed really hard, so it wasn't a great turnout. Maybe you didn't make it either.
I couldn't remember this off the top of my head, so I wanted to clarify really quickly. That show was Harry performing with you, Rich, and then he would continue performing with his band Grubstake. But you were just performing with Harry. You are not a member of Grubstake, right?
Correct. I am not a member of Grubstake.
So in that case, in general, have you performed with Harry for a long time in both of your musical careers, or just on and off over the course of your careers?
No, not long time. I've known Harry for many, many, many years, back when he was running the Folklore Center out on East 17th Avenue. And we would occasionally play some tunes together at a party or at a get-together or a song circle. But I don't really recall when we first, quote, did a performance together. So I'm not going to be much help there. Yeah, we've just kind of been around each other for a long time.
What about you, Mollie? Do you have a musical connection to Harry at all?
No, I never performed with Harry, ever. I mean, in fact, when I was working at the Denver Folklore Center, he had sold the business by then to somebody else. So he was around the scene, though. He was still present in Denver. He was the president of the Musicians Union, and he worked for Colorado Council on the Arts. And, I just knew him. He was just a fixture because he had started the whole scene here for a lot of people as far as opening the Folklore Center goes.
By the way, if you want to learn more about Harry Tuft as a whole, then be sure to check out my Music of the Mountains column from the October 12th, 2023 edition of The Mountain Ear, and be sure to listen to the retrospective episode featuring him and John McEwen. By the way, that episode is episode 2 of the retrospective series. Just as an acknowledgement of something that I said in that particular episode, I know I said I would be transcribing that entire episode, and I haven't gotten around to doing it yet. I will do it in the future, I promise. I just don't know when. We'll figure it out. But anyway, back to you two, Mollie and Rich. What are some of your favorite aspects about being able to perform live, and what has stuck out to you about performing live over the years?
Oh, the money. No, that's a joke. You don't have to print that.
Yeah, no.
I was kind of a show-off. I like to be on stage. I like performing, and I love music, and I like entertaining people, and I want to do it when I'm playing with people that are my friends and I get along with, and we understand each other musically. And Mollie and I did a performance recently, and it was like that. It was the two of us. We like each other. We like playing together. We had a really nice audience. Those are the things you look for. We're not ever going to be big stars. If we are, I'll be very surprised. but it's not because we aren't any good. It's because that's a whole branch of the business that we don't really feel like doing, I think. We're too old and too tired for that.
Yeah, it's a different racket now, so for sure.
Yeah, it's a whole different 20 or 30 years ago when we were out hustling gigs. It's a whole different ballgame now. Everything's different. The way you sell your music is different. The way you promote your music is different. There are record companies, but people are just producing their own records and no one's buying product anymore. Everything is streamed. It's just a whole different world than when we started off X number of years ago.
And what about you, Mollie? Is there anything in particular that stuck out to you about being able to perform live?
If you know that it's going to be some shows, you kind of think, I don't know how this is going to work. It maybe not be a listening room or it's outside where people are talking, and we're definitely a listening act. So I can be apprehensive about that these days, but I am a little more discerning about what gets me out the door as far as the kind of gig. And if you trust the promoter and you trust the house concert person or the festival person, you can pretty much bank on a good crowd. People that do promote music, the people we work with are generally really in it for the love of it. And even places like Telluride Bluegrass Festival or Folks Fest, those guys, they work their butts off all year, and they're not millionaires, they're not by any stretch of the imagination millionaires, and they are doing it just like we are for the love of it, So that's what really helps when you're all of the same mind and you want to be there.
I wanted to get back to you for a second, Rich, because Mollie talked about how you were the writer of the duo, that Mollie didn't really write much in regards to original material, but you have written some original material of your own. Can you talk a little bit about some of the stuff you've written?
Well, I'm not a lyricist, so I'm more of an instrumental person. I have several CDs of instrumental music of my own that I've written, but when it comes to lyrics, it just sounds like my junior high diary. It's just not something that I'm just not good at lyrics. How can you compete with some of the great writers out there? But I have lots and lots of pieces that I've written that I haven't recorded, and often I pick up the guitar and something just comes out of it, and that's what I enjoy doing. And occasionally we're able to take some of that stuff and maybe put some lyrics to it. And Mollie's better at it than I am, or we work at it together. I do some and she does some.
So have you worked with lyricists to try and bring some of those songs to fruition, or have you mostly kept those instrumentals as that, instrumentals?
I have worked a little bit with other people, but nothing really to speak of. It never gets going.
Well, for the songs that you two focus on for your duo, is there anything in particular that you hope people take away from those performances when they come and see you?
Well, people tell us that we're real engaging with the audience because we're a couple maybe, I don't know. Sometimes we'll do a song that for some reason the audience really takes to, and I'm not sure why. It surprises me a little bit. Or there'll be a line in a song that all of a sudden they'll just laugh at, that they find humorous, that I'd never even thought about being funny. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it's just, I don't know. I don't know what it is they like about us, what they do.
I feel it answers the question. Essentially, you really enjoy just the audience reaction, hearing the spontaneity of the audience's reactions, especially when it's something that you don't expect, and just connecting with them as a whole.
Well, yeah, and Mollie and I do play off of each other pretty well, I think. So
You play off the audience.
And you play off the audience,
Yeah, that's part of performing, I think, really.
Right.
Do you have anything to add to what Rich just talked about, Mollie?
No, I just think that you never know how it's going to go. You may write a set list, and then 2 or 3 songs into the set list, you're completely turning around and going the opposite direction just because something's not working or you're feeling that something is working, you want to continue in that vein. So it's fun to be able to play off the audience. So they're a big part of it, really.
Okay, we're going to start to wrap up this interview, but I just have a couple questions about the Gold Hill Inn show and particularly the opening band, Lucy Moore and the Night Children. Have you performed with the group before? Have they opened for you before?
Yeah, we've never performed with the Night Children, but Lucy's opened for us many times, and we have recorded family band records, so we're definitely in the mood for some family stuff. I mean, we've done 2 records with the kids, and they've also sung on our duo records, so they've been around in the studio with us many times. So.
By the way, as I was attempting to listen to that original interview that we conducted in September of 2023, I did end up hearing that the performance that I promoted back then, which was also for the Gold Hill Inn, also happened to be opened by Lucy Moore and the Night Children. And as a final clarifying question, you mentioned that Brigid is primarily focusing on her family at this point. Is music something that she does at some point want to pursue, or has that always been more of a side thing for her?
That was a side thing for her. She and her husband play music sometimes, and they've done a few gigs. When they were in LA, they did some gigs in coffee places and stuff. And just, I don't know, she's a DJ, although she hasn't done that since she's been back in Colorado. But she was never drawn to, Lucy was a music major, Brigid was a media studies major, and they both kind of went on divergent paths there. But
well, unless you guys have anything else to add, I think that's pretty much it from me. Do you want to mention one last thing about the upcoming show at the Gold Hill Inn and when it's going to be?
The 13th at 7 o'clock, I think. So come on up.
Thank you so much to Mollie and Rich for coming on board and joining us for the podcast. Technically for the second time, but really for the first time, since this is the first time we're airing their interview. If you want to see what I wrote about Mollie O'Brien and Rich Moore when I initially promoted them for their Gold Hill Inn show on Sunday, September 24th, 2023, then be sure to check out the Music of the Mountains column that was part of the September 14th, 2023 edition of the Mountain Ear, which you can find in digital scans of the paper and a digital version of the article on the Mountain Ear website, which, by the way, is newly updated. If you want to hear what Mollie and Rich have in store in regards to their discography, then be sure to check out their various releases wherever you get your music. I wanted to shout out some previous groups that Mollie and Rich have been involved in. That R&B group that they founded around the time that they first met was called The Late Show. I'm not sure if there's any particular record of the band available online, but I just figured I'd shout out the name. Mollie also ended up performing in a live performance CD with the Mother Folkers in 1989, and she has even contributed vocals to the Grammy-winning album True Life Blues, The Songs of Bill Monroe, and has sung numerous times on the radio show A Prairie Home Companion. Oh, and by the way, her brother, that would be Tim O'Brien, who has actually won not one, but 2 Grammys for albums that he has released. In 2005, he won a Grammy Award for Best Traditional Folk Album for Fiddler's Green, and in 2014, he won for Best Bluegrass Album for the Earls of Leicester. As Mollie mentioned earlier, she and Tim have released multiple duo records together, which you can check out wherever you get your music. By the way, on Spotify, Mollie, Rich, and Tim are all categorized as separate artists in each of their albums. They are not credited as duos in any way. They are each credited individually with their own profiles. So whichever artist you end up checking out, you'll be able to check out all of the collaborations that they've been involved with as well, at least on Spotify. If you want to learn more about Mollie O'Brien and Rich Moore directly from the source, then be sure to head to their website, mollieobrien.com, where you can also check out their Facebook, YouTube, and iTunes. However, there's another group that you can check out involving this family. Tim has been involved in the bluegrass band Hot Rise since its formation in 1978. The current lineup consists of him, Nick Forster, Pete Wernick, and Brian Sutton. Previous members included Charles Sawtell, who unfortunately passed away in 1999, and Mike Scapp. He ended up passing away in 2016. And Hot Rise's discography, that's Hot R-I-Z-E, can also be found wherever you get your music. If you're curious about the endeavors of Lucy Moore and the Night Children, then be sure to check out Lucy Moore's Instagram at Lucy Galen Moore. That's Lucy Galen Moore. And finally, to see Lucy Moore and the Night Children open for Lucy Moore's parents, Mollie O'Brien and Rich Moore, then be sure to head to the Gold Hill Inn located at 401 Main Street in Gold Hill on Sunday, October 13th, 2024, starting at 7 p.m. Thank you so much to everybody who tuned in to this week's Wednesday retrospective edition of the Mountaineer Podcast. Hopefully I've got one more episode at least of the retrospective editions in my pocket in the near future. We'll see how that goes though. In the meantime, I'll be back with our regular Music of the Mountains episode on Friday. So if you want to share this episode or others with whoever you see fit, then be sure to head to the mtnearpodcast.buzzsprout.com or to the mtnear.com/the-mountain-ear-podcast. As a reminder, our website has been newly updated. And if you would like to be involved in any way, shape, or form on the podcast, whether you are a Peak to Peak member who wants to be interviewed, or you have a segment that you want to contribute, or you have a story idea, or you have advertising that you want us to put on the podcast, then be sure to email me at media@themountaineer.com and we'll get something sorted for you. I will see you guys with our weekly music episode on Friday. Have a great rest of your day. The song that you are currently listening to is called Keep It Clean, and it is the opening track from the Mollie O'Brien and Rich Moore duo album Saints and Sinners, which you can stream along with various other releases from Mollie O'Brien and Rich Moore, both solo and duo, wherever you get your music. You can learn more about the artists as a whole by going online to mollieobrien.com, and you can check out Mollie O'Brien and Rich Moore performing after an opener from their daughter's band, Lucy Moore and the Night Children, by going to the Gold Hill Inn, located at 401 Main Street in Gold Hill on Sunday, October 13th, starting at 7 p.m.
For to keep it clean. Up she jumped, down she fell. Her mouth flew open like a mustard shell. I ride her over, give her Coca-Cola, lemon soda, saucer of ice cream, soap and water. For to keep it clean. If you wanna yes. Ride 'em over, give 'em Coca-Cola, a lemon soda, saucer of ice cream, soap and water, for to keep it clean.
And that's it for our show. Subscribe online to get more access to more news, weekly updates to our community calendar, and a link to our YouTube channel by visiting themountaineer.com. Be sure to use the coupon code PODCAST when subscribing for a 10% discount, only available to our listeners. If you are in the local Peak to Peak area, be sure to pick up a print edition of The Mountaineer at a local business. I'm Dango Rose. Thank you for listening.